welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy? I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're discussing part 2 of chapter 18, Fool's Kiss. And the last we left off was them going to bed at night, Lord Golden and Fitz. Lord Golden very sick from over drinking. Fitz staying in his room to possibly spite, possibly just obey Lord Golden's directive of don't come to me even if I'm sick.
Yeah.
I want privacy. So they go to bed and wake up in the morning, and Lord Golden is doing his makeup.
And instead of doing makeup to make him look better, he is exaggerating how poorly he looks this morning with his hangover.
Yeah, and he is very hungover. Let's get that straight. He is sick. Lord Golden does not feel great. He does have shadows under his eyes, but Lord Golden is making the shadows into bags and deepening wrinkles to add a decade onto his age as well. And this is where, I believe you mentioned it last episode, where the fool says, I hate what we did last night, or I hate what I did last night.
And Fitz sort of accepts that in what he's saying and doesn't make him elaborate. He just tries to make his friend feel better by saying, perhaps it was a kindness. Perhaps it's better that they discovered before they wed that Seidel's heart is not as constant as Sybil believed. He shook his head, refusing the comfort. If I had not led, she would not have followed in that dance. Her first sallies were but a girl's coquetry. I think it was instinctive for a girl to flirt, as it is for boys to show off their muscles and daring. Girls of her age are like little kittens, pouncing at grass to practice their hunting skills. They do not yet know the meaning of the motions they make. He sighed and went back to his little box of colored powders. This is such an interesting take from a Robin Hobb character, considering we just spent the last book with 13-year-old Malta being treated as though she's a grown-up and has to face grown-up consequences for opening a courting box to a 23-year-old. 21-year-old, maybe, sorry. I find it so interesting that...
Well, Amber was not there.
That's true. But I find that detail really interesting. And, I mean, in general, we have Dutiful, who is the same age as Seidel, roughly, who is going to be wed soon, or he has his betrothal coming up in a few weeks. So I just think it's really interesting that in this world where clearly young people do get into relationships, even with older people, we have a character who is much older saying, no, it's not right. This is like a kitten. She doesn't know what she's doing. This is my fault. And I feel really gross for having done that to her. And I don't know, it's refreshing. I like that there's at least one character in this world who will acknowledge that. That's all I had to say.
So Fitz is watching as he makes himself not only look worse and more ill, but adding decades to his age, and asks, do you think that's necessary? And Lord Golden basically goes on to say, yeah, I really want to prick any sort of dream that Seidel might be having. I really want to see her disillusioned, me disillusioned. Lord Golden, as she wants him to be, does not exist. Let her kind of flee back to Sybil, and I hope he has her back, because I want to, disabuse any notion that I'm glamorous in her mind.
Right, which is a kindness, really, right? Like, he doesn't have to go this extra step, but he really does want to make sure that whatever he did isn't going to long-term affect Seidel, and she's not going to pine after him and come to court later and want to continue things, because ultimately that was not his real end goal. And so he is sort of trying to do a kindness of making himself look old and weathered so that she can see, like, wow, this was a big mistake. I actually don't want this at all.
He also says, no one is invulnerable to me if I choose to enchant them. No one but you, that is. He rolled his eyes at me dolorously. But there is no time for me to mourn that. Now you must go forth and make it known that I wish a private moment with Lady Brisinga. So he always has to throw a little sally in at Fitz there, being like, oh, No one can resist my charm except for you,
Yeah.
bat eyelashes.
Yeah. But I mean, even Fitz can't resist his charm. And I got a question about this. Do you think this is just a silly, sly remark of like, I'm really good at manipulating people? Or is this something that is like an ability of his to draw people in, like a genuine magic ability?
I don't think it's genuinely magic, no.
Okay. Because it does seem as though Beloved is really good at getting people to do what they want when they need.
I think if it was genuinely magic, we would see it more during strenuous events. The things that, Fool probably wouldn't have been treated as harshly as he would over his life. That sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking like against other whites, it probably wouldn't work, right? So like at the tower, what happens to him later?
Sure, but against Regal, against the people here, he's fighting for his life, against the Piebalds eventually. There are things that Amber and Lord Golden have been involved in, and the Fool around Buckkeep being teased and ridiculed and stuff like that.
That's fair.
Probably wouldn't have had to endure if it was a magical ability to make people like him,
Yeah, I guess I'm saying more like this isn't a general aura of come be nice to me. This is more of like an ability to like get people.
Yeah, I know.
And I feel like that'd be much harder to do to multiple people all the time.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
So he has to go tell Lady Brisinga that Lord Golden wants a private meeting and then go knock on Laurel's door as well and say, hey, we're going to get ready to go. So by the time he's done with all of that, they are getting the horses ready at the in the stable, and it's a brief meeting between Lady Brisinga and Lord Golden. And when he returned, he indicated that I should take our bags down immediately. So yes, he is correct in assuming that feelings are not very, they're not running high towards Lord Golden this morning, so they can make their ungracious exit.
And they're not even stopping to eat, which Fitz remarks is probably for the best because Beloved is not really in a space to be able to eat with this hangover. But he did grab all the fruit that was in Lord Golden's room and pack it on his person so that they will at least have something to eat later.
So they set out at an easy pace, riding slowly from the courtyard. Only when the line of trees along the road hid us from the manor's view did he halt and ask me, which way? Laurel had been riding in a mortified silence. She had said nothing, but I gathered that in humiliating himself, Lord Golden had daubed her with the same brush. Now she looked shocked as I said, this way, and turned my black off the road and into the sun-dappled forest. Don't wait for us, he told me brusquely. Go as swiftly as you can to close the gap. We'll catch up as we may, though my poor head may hold us back a bit. The worry now is that we may lose his trail. I am certain Laurel can follow yours. Go now. And so he speeds after Nighteyes, following that kind of directional compass, knowing that Nighteyes is off to this direction, so I'm not going to go back to where I saw him last. I'm going to go meet him.
Right.
Fastest way.
And talking about how this is really good that Lord Golden has sort of pushed him to go ahead of them because it gives him time to converse with Nighteyes and sort of check in on his dog without Laurel being there.
Right.
And so it just sort of protects him a little bit. It gives him a bit of a buffer.
And it gives time for Lord Golden to kind of dissemble for Fitz and create a story, which works out, but it might not have worked out.
Yeah.
So Fitz is letting a tiny thread of his awareness tug at Nighteyes to let Nighteyes know that he was coming, and he feels a twitch of his response. So Fitz is urging my black to greater speed, and Fitz notices that Nighteyes had covered a lot of ground during the night. I did not let myself worry about whether or not Laurel could easily track me. My drive now was to rejoin my wolf, see that he was well, and then push on in pursuit of the prince. My uneasiness for him had been steadily swelling. He was pushing on, trying to find Nighteyes, and by early afternoon, Fitz has an indefinable conviction that Nighteyes was near. Before I saw him or scented him, I began to get the strange feeling that I had seen this terrain before, that something about those trees ahead was oddly familiar. So he pulls in his horse, slowly scans the hills around him, only to have Nighteyes step out from a patch of alder brush scarce a stone's throw away. His horse flinches, of course, and Fitz calms her. And Nighteyes adds into the horse, "Too tired and not hungry enough to chase you."
Yeah. So, hey, at least he's trying to be friendly.
Right, yeah. Fitz brought some meat, and Nighteyes obviously has not had time to stop and hunt, and he was in no condition to hunt either, so he's very starving. Fitz wants to look at Nighteyes' injuries, but knows that it's better to keep going than to bother Nighteyes about it while he's eating. Just like let him do his stuff.
Yeah, while he's eating, he sort of stays back, but when Nighteyes is ready to continue on, Fitz says, "Well, let me just check you first." And Nighteyes cuts him off by saying, "You can't right now, maybe later, but
yeah,
they're traveling.
They're traveling.
Yeah, they're traveling, so we need to travel too." So that's a really important detail too, that like Nighteyes doesn't really want him poking around in there anyway, but he is also like, "Hey, we have to go."
Yeah, and Nighteyes is right about needing to use all the light as possible because tracking them is very hard over this dry, hard ground. They have to stop twice and cast a large circle before they can find the scent and trail again. And eventually the shadows were growing long when Lord Golden and Laurel caught up with us. "I see your dog has found us again," she observed wryly, and I could think of nothing to say in reply. "Lord Golden tells me that you tracked the prince, that a serving girl told you the prince fled north?" There was a question in her voice, and her mouth was flat with disapproval. I did not know if she hoped to catch Lord Golden in a lie, or if I was supposed to have seduced someone for the information. She didn't know he was a prince. She simply called him a lad with a hunting cat. I tried to think of something that would divert her from more questions. "The trail is poor. Any help you could give me would be welcome." And Fitz's ruse worked. She's a very good tracker and helps them keep going long after Fitz and Nighteyes would have had to stop because of the poor light.
It's really interesting because he says it's a ruse and then admits that she actually is able to help them go longer. So
definitely.
I guess at this moment, maybe it was a ruse, but they definitely needed her help.
Eventually they go to a creek where they had stopped for water, their quarry. 2 men, 2 horses, and the cat were all playing in the damp soil at the water's edge. And there they decided to make camp for the night. Basically, they want to stop to camp where they know the trail is rather than try to blunder ahead in the dark and try to re-find it during the day if they mess up. So they make a bear camp, only a small fire, and some blankets beside it. They don't have a ton of food, but at least they had plenty of water. And Laurel earns a lot of favor because she had some extra meat and says the dog needs the meat. We can, subsist on the bread and fruit. So in Fitz's eyes, she gains a lot of favor there of not hoarding that meat for tomorrow.
Right. And even Nighteyes deigns to take it from her hand.
Right, I know. He's just a big dog, see?
Yeah.
Afterward, when I insisted on looking at his scratches, he did not snarl when she joined me, though she was wise enough not to attempt to touch him. As I had suspected, he had licked most of the unguent away. The scratches were scabbed closed, and the flesh beside them did not look too angry. I decided against putting more ointment on them. As I put the unused pot away, Laurel nodded her head in quiet agreement. Better dry and sealed than greased too well and the scabs softened too much. Lord Golden is laying out on his blanket. He hadn't eaten much. I'm sure that's a rough hangover, but I've been there, buddy.
Yeah. Haven't we all?
I have not had to ride a whole day in my saddle after that, though.
No, that would be too much.
Yeah.
But you can't really tell if he's asleep or not because the way the light is working, he could be looking up at the sky or he could be asleep.
Right. And Fitz kind of gestures to him, saying, I suppose he has the right of it. Early to bed and early start tomorrow, perhaps with luck, will overtake them. And Laurel takes this opportunity to say, okay, he's probably sleeping. Let me talk to Fitz or to Tom Badgerlock alone here. It will take some hard riding as well as a measure of luck. They ride assuredly, knowing where they are bound, while we must go carefully lest we lose them. How did you know when to leave the road to find their trail? I took a breath and chose a lie at random. Luck, I replied quietly. I had a feeling they would be going in this direction, and when I struck their trail, we followed it. And your dog had the same feeling, which is why he had gone ahead of you? I just looked at her. The words rose to my tongue without my volition. Maybe I'm witted. Oh, yes, she replied sarcastically, and that is why the queen trusts you to go after her son, because you are one of those she most fears. You are not witted, Tom Badgerlock. I've known witted folk before. I've endured their disdain and snubs for folks who do not share their magic. Where I grew up, there were plenty of them, and in that place and time they did little to conceal it. You are no more witted than I am, though you are one of the best trackers I've ever ridden with. I did not thank her for the compliment. Tell me about the witted folk you grew up with. I smoothed the wrinkle out of my blanket and lay back on top of it. I closed my eyes almost all the way as if I were only mildly interested in her words. She kind of is silent for a moment or two and then speaks up. Oh, they were not so bad. Not like the tales folk tell. They did not turn into bears or deer or seals at the light of the full moon, nor did they eat raw meat and steal children. Still, they were bad enough. How? Oh, it just was not fair, she said at last with a sigh. Imagine never being sure you were alone, for some little bird or lurking fox might carry the eyes and ears of your neighbor. They took full advantage of their wit, for their animal partners forever told them where the hunting was best or the berries first ripened. Were they that open that they were witted? Never have I heard of such a village. It was not that they were open about what they were, so much as that I was excluded for what I was not. Children are not subtle. The bitterness of her words shocked me. I recalled abruptly how the rest of Galen's coterie had treated me with disdain when I could not seem to master the skill. I tried to imagine growing up amidst such snubbing. Then a thought intruded. I thought your father was a huntsman for Lord Sitswell. Did not you grow up on his estate then? I wanted to know where this place was, where witted ones were so common that their children had come to expect it of their playmates. Oh, well, but that came later, you see. I was not sure if she lied then or if she had lied earlier, only that the untruth hung almost palpably between us. It made an uncomfortable silence. And then he thinks back to that off-hand remark that she had made. She had said that she would know these hills well, having spent time not far from Galeton amongst her other folk. Shade, too, had mentioned something of that. So Fitz really wants to know where this wit village is. Like, where can I go? Where can I, meet these people?
It's interesting that that's how you're reading it.
How are you reading it?
I saw it as more, well, I think he wants to know because he's curious where others are like him. But I thought it was more a suspicion of maybe she is in line with the people that they're hunting.
I think eventually, while he was asking and inquiring around that line, his mind kind of got there after the Lord Sitswell thing. But I think initially he just wants to know more about the village. At least that's, again, how I'm reading it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think he wants to know more. I think he's always curious to know the difference between what he knows and what other people know, especially for somebody who is saying they're not witted, talking about knowing that there's a witted village.
Right.
I don't know. But I didn't see it as a yearning for knowing that place so he could go there. I thought more as what details can I get out of this that I don't already know? So I don't know. Definitely could read it your way though. But I do think it's really interesting because here we see sort of exactly what Jenna was talking about a few chapters ago when she and Fitz had a conversation about hedge magic and
Yeah.
how when Jenna was being raised, she had her sister who did not have it inherently. And that caused a little bit of friction between her sister and herself
Yeah.
because of the jealousy of not having that. And we kind of see that now from the point of view of the person who doesn't have the magic.
Kids are not subtle. They will take full advantage of anything that they have to lord it over other kids who do not have that.
Yeah, and that's also really interesting because according to the Witted village that Fitz was with, kids wouldn't have really had access to animals anyway. So they shouldn't have been able. So I think it really opens up the world more of like Black Rolf was part of a village that is not necessarily the norm or the only way that witted people lived.
Correct. But also the place that Laurel is from is kind of a hotbed of where the piebalds of grew up and started their heavy-handed advocacy, I'll call it.
Sure. But I'm just saying that it's really interesting to know that like this isn't a monolith culture and there's not. So it's even more interesting to have Fitz going in thinking he knows everything there is to know from his 1 year with the one witted community when it's very clear, increasingly so, that there are different opinions.
He has lamented the fact that he was not born and raised in the wit and says like, I don't know everything. So I don't know if I wouldn't call him overconfident in his knowledge about some things. Yeah, he gets to know a little bit more about Laurel's history and gets to speculate a little bit more and suspects that there is some untruth in what she is saying here. That she went to Lord Sitswell and became a huntsman for him, but also was raised in this area with a bunch of witted folk. I don't remember the actual truth. I feel like it was something fairly innocuous of like, I was in this area and eventually had to leave, and I spent like a few years with Lord Sitswell.
I thought it was that her mother is witted and she was not. And so her mother stayed with the witted community and she left because she wasn't witted and she didn't feel she belonged.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, pretty much. So do you remember that from like later on where she says that or anything?
No, I remember you saying it a few episodes ago and being very confident about it.
Well, there you go.
So I assumed that you found it somewhere and you were talking about it.
See, I can't even remember what I said a couple weeks ago, let alone 5 years. But there's also that whole thing where where Fitz says, oh, maybe I'm witted. And then she very sarcastically is like, oh yeah, sure, you're witted. But at the end of this conversation, we'll talk more about it when we get there, Nighteyes is convinced that she knows that Tom Badgerlock is witted.
Yeah, and also makes the comment that
Kettrican hates the witted the most.
Yeah, that fears the witted people the most.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because we know for a fact Kettrican does not hate or fear wit. That in her culture that it's perfectly normal to be a little bit more in touch with nature.
Yeah.
And she has no problem with wit. And as far as we're aware, never has. I think she's worried about what these people calling themselves the piebald group are doing. But it's interesting that that is taken by Laurel as her fearing wit.
Right.
And I also wonder how much Kettrican knows of Laurel's background. Is that part of why she wanted Laurel to go with? Because Laurel would know a little bit about this subject?
Maybe.
I don't know.
If they are close enough.
But it is also a little bit underhanded of Laurel to sort of be like, no, you couldn't be witted. You're not arrogant enough about it. And just go on this rant about how annoying witted people are to somebody she's pretty sure is witted.
Also kind of funny, though.
Yeah, a little bit. So to get rid of this sort of uncomfortable silence, Fitz sort of pushes away the ideas. He's sort of made a couple categories where he's going to wait to get more information to decide what the lie means here and what she potentially was trying to do with the lie. So he tries to sort of push on the conversation by saying that I guess you don't really take the popular opinion of wishing witted folk to be chopped up and hanged like everyone else. And she replies in a way that is sort of surprising to Fitz.
Yeah, because of her, her saying, oh, they were not all so bad. But all of a sudden she's like, no, it's a filthy habit.
The way she said it made me feel as if fire and blade were too small a cure for it. I think that parents who teach their children to indulge it should be whipped. Those that choose to practice it should not marry nor have children. They already have a beast to share their homes and lives. Why should they cheat a woman or a man by taking a spouse? Those who are witted should have to choose, early in their lives, which they will bind to, an animal or another human. That's all. And she sort of has risen in volume and from her passion in this, and then suddenly realizes that she needs to take a step back. So she casually says goodnight to Tom after this, and then physically turns away from him so that he knows this is over, this conversation.
Right. Yeah. And that's when Nighteyes says, she knows. Then you think she is witted? I asked him. I think she knows that you are witted, and I don't think she likes it much. For a time, I lay silently mulling that. But she fed you. Oh, well, I think she likes me. It's you she's not sure about. Go to sleep. Are you going to reach after them tonight? And Fitz is like, I don't really want to. I'll have a terrible headache if I reach after the prince and connect. But I should. So I was like, I'll try. But I thought that was really funny. Nighteyes is very sure that Laurel suspects Fitz, Tom Badgerlock, of being witted.
Right.
And I think it does play with her because, like, she had a very hard upbringing and was surrounded by something that she was excluded from birth, something that her mother had too, and her brother, or was it cousin? Her cousin.
I'm not sure.
I think Deerkin is her cousin. So her family had it, and eventually she left because she couldn't stand being around it, and now she's helping her queen with something like a very serious something, and then she finds out that her queen maybe trusts somebody, but does the queen know that this person is witted, and are they trustworthy? Because I had such a bad thing about it, but we had a good relationship before this.
Right.
So
and
do I like you and trust you still?
Yeah. I mean, it would be a lot, right? Especially when you have the sort of wounds from childhood.
Right.
And the experience to back up that this group of people is always terrible. And especially kids are bad anyway.
Yeah.
Like so of course it's going to be extra bad when you're a child if you are the other by not having this special thing. So I think that's playing a part, but I do wonder if some of this vitriol and hatred and opinions about witted people, if this is something that she learned more so from her dad, because her dad is a gamekeeper and did end up eventually, presumably, separating from her mom to go be a gamekeeper somewhere. So I'm wondering if her dad had a lot to say about sort of like, it's not fair. I had to share your mom with a beast.
Yeah, your mother's people.
Yeah. And I mean, also, if you think about it, being
stereotypical divorced kids, like parents
caught in the middle,
influencing. Yeah.
But also, if you think about it, I'm sure there were parts where she felt bad about not having the gift, being raised in a household where her mother did. And that also maybe feeling like her mom was putting her witted pet or beast or whatever above her because she's not witted. And it could definitely come across that way, right? We know from a witted person's perspective, they're not intentionally trying to put their partner above you.
Yeah.
But they're connected on a level that you can't get with anybody else. Of course, that's going to come out, and especially you'd be aware of that if you're the child and your
Fitz
parent
kind of feels that way too.
Yeah.
Because he feels like I can't have a partner with Molly.
Yeah.
Because one, he's not sure if she will accept him, which is super sad. But two, he can't dedicate himself to two different things.
Yeah, he feels as though it's not fair to Nighteyes or Molly.
He's very, Canid-like in that too.
Yeah.
One person loyalty. That's it.
Mm-hmm. So I definitely see parts of this being something that you could see, like potentially her father has said to her, and she had those negative experiences. So she's like, yeah, they don't deserve to have kids or a family or whatever. I don't know. But also so funny that Nighteyes is like, she likes me. I just don't think she likes you. Who could not like Nighteyes, to be fair?
So Fitz decides and declares that he's going to try to connect to Dutiful tonight. And then Nighteyes is very resigned. Go ahead then, I'll be right here. Nighteyes, when I skill and afterward, do you share the pain? Not exactly. Though it is hard for me to remain apart from it, I can. It just feels cowardly when I do. It's not cowardly at all. What is the point of both of us suffering? He made no answer to me, but I sensed that he reserved some thought on that for himself. Something about my question almost amused him. I lifted my hand from his fur and set it on my chest. I thought that was really funny too, because it's such a lack of awareness on Fitz's part.
Yes.
And the reader can sense it, but Fitz is still oblivious to it. Oh my gosh, it's perfect.
Especially because this is a callback to exactly what Nighteyes told Fitz.
I know.
Of like, we don't need to share my pain. It's fine. There's no sense of both of us being hurt. And now here Fitz is doing the same, and Nighteyes is like, yeah, okay.
Nighteyes is reserving some thought on this. I can't read him. It's almost like there's amusement, but I can't tell why that would be.
Why would he feel that way?
And so Fitz closes his eyes, centers himself, and tries for a skilled trance. Dread of pain kept intruding on my thoughts, pushing awry my carefully constructed piece. Finally, I managed to find a balancing point and held myself there, somewhere between dreaming and waking. I reached forth into the night. That night I felt, as I had not in years, the sweetness of the pure connection of the skill. I reached out, and it was as if someone reached back and clasped both my hands in welcome. It was a simple, sweet joining, as comforting as homecoming after a long journey. There was the linking of the skill, and someone drowsing in the soft bed in a loft under the eaves of a thatched roof. The homely smells of a cottage surrounded me, the lingering smell of a good stew cooked that night, and the honey tang of a beeswax candle burning late somewhere below. I could hear a man and a woman talking, their voices muted as if they did not want to disturb my rest. I could not make out their words, but I knew I was home and safe, and that nothing could harm me there. As our skill link faded, I sank deeply into the most peaceful sleep I had known in many a year.
And that was not Dutiful.
No. That is Nettle.
Yes.
There's a couple things about this I want to talk about.
Yeah.
One is the first thing that Fitz feels is the pure, sweet connection of skill as he had not felt in years.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings to mind and adjusts my theory a little bit on this, is that wit and skill combined don't make pure skill connections. Like Fitz joining with Dutiful, who has the wit and skill,
right,
leaves him with a headache and not feeling fulfilled. But somebody who is fully skilled, only skilled, and skilled in dreams and things like that, reaches out and makes that connection to him, and he does not have to use his wit across a different skill connection, across a different magic connection. And so he feels relaxed, and this is a full connection. This is just skill to skill. Because with Dutiful, he's reading the wit in Dutiful's mind as well. So to me, maybe it's that extra straining that gives him such an intense headache with Dutiful every time. He gets headaches with skill no matter what.
Right.
That's true. However, with Dutiful, like you mentioned before, it's getting worse, it feels like.
Yeah.
So maybe that's connecting with the skill, making that bridge, but also using the wit of his own body in somebody else's body and reading other connections, just like that cross kind of, not contamination, but the cross
Yeah.
contamination of the two magics. Maybe that does make a difference for how it feels to Fitz, because this is unique language in describing the skill that we haven't had since Fitz refers to it since Verity.
Right.
But he has been connected before with Nettle, and he has been connected before with Dutiful.
So I think this is really important because I think this topic is important because I think there are different levels to connecting with people through the skill.
Yeah, for sure.
I think obviously we know that in some capacity, skill users reach out with skill unbeknownst to them to call other skill users, especially when they're in need, right? Like this happened during the Red Ship raiding wars where both Fitz and Verity could ride through the eyes of people in the villages being attacked, but they couldn't do anything. And that was a skill connection, but it wasn't that like accepting sort of thing. I find that really interesting. So I feel like in the past, I don't want to talk on what's happening currently with Dutiful, but in the past, when he has reached out to his children and seen them in the skill and vice versa, that wasn't that like full connection because on the children's part, maybe they weren't strong enough, or it was just something that wasn't as like the reaching out part was sort of a second nature thing.
Yeah, I have something to piggyback off of that, but I'll let you keep going. Just remind me if I forget.
Okay. So I think that like growing up, because they're so young, they're not doing anything with intention. They don't know what they're doing. This sort of sharing of what's happening with them isn't that full connection. It's not giving Fitz the feeling that he's craving because it's not like a two-way handhold. It's more of like somebody gripping somebody else. And so then here in this moment, what he's doing with his daughter is two-way. And whether that's because she's gotten older and has unknowingly had all this practice in the skill, that she too can feel that reach of Fitz, because in this moment Fitz is really reaching out purposefully, and I think they're close location wise as well. I don't know that for sure, but I'm sure closer than he's been in a while. And so sort of having that reach and her being able to reach back and just be like, yeah, I'm here too. Everything's good.
I think the thing that I wanted to say kind of ties in directly with what you're saying right now, too, is that they've never been in this position before where both of them are falling asleep. Both of them are looking out for something. We don't know why Nettle was reaching out, but always before we hear about one of them going into each other's dreams while the other person is awake kind of thing. So them both being in the same state. Of just about falling asleep, and Fitz making that connection, like you said, both of them kind of reaching out, and makes that appear like, hey, we're looking for something at the same time.
And I would argue we do know why she's reaching out, because we know that Nettle is fascinated with the wolf man.
True.
And that she does search for him in her dreams, that becomes a plot point later. So I feel like there's a potential that there's that curiosity, and maybe it's not every night, but some nights she just wonders if this will be a night where she gets to see Wolf Man or whatever she calls him.
Yeah, true. And Fitz finds her, and they're in Molly and Byrric's home, and they're talking downstairs, and he feels so safe. Relaxed at home because Nettle feels safe and relaxed and at home.
And I'm sure also there's a level of people that he loves being there and being safe that like also contributes to that. I also wanted to talk, I don't know if this is on purpose, but I wonder if there's a little bit of thematic things happening at the moment where whenever Fitz has this moment with his daughter, who he fully acknowledges as his daughter, who he fully acknowledges that he loves and cares about. When they have this connection, it's pure and blissful and sort of like a comforting thing for him. Whereas he's never met Dutiful, and he can't really accept that this is his child. There's a lot of like blockage of not wanting to accept the reality that this is his biological child, that like he had some part to do with bringing this child into the world, and he's never really met him or thought on him too hard, and he's getting closer and closer to actually really meeting Dutiful for the first time and coming face to face with what his son is like. And
Right.
there's that sort of like physical recoil of not knowing and not wanting to accept sort of all of reality that I think is played out really beautifully, and seeing every time as it gets closer to him seeing his actual son in person, it's hurting more and more. And there's more of that like dissonance of pain or whatever. I think I don't know if it was like that was the intention behind it, but I do sort of think that that's a really interesting thematic thing happening.
Yeah.
That sort of reflects the mental state of how Fitz feels about his two different children. So I don't know, but I do find it interesting. I do wonder if part of the pain that he feels skilling is, like you said, because of that use of both wit and skill. It's not a pure thing. Or if
we also know it's his brain injury as well. Like
yeah,
the skull fracture.
That's like, it absolutely has to do with the skull fracture. But here we have him using skill and it not hurting at all, which it has happened before. That is like a thing that can happen for him.
Yep.
Very rarely. But
yeah, just like
the added pressure of the magic.
the added the emphasis on just the sweet, pure skill connection and him being peaceful and not in pain and stuff kind of brought that to mind for me. So I don't know if it's always going to be true, but that just seems like it could be an added layer on there, just like the strain of him not knowing how to combine magics, the prince not knowing how to do anything. So with that connection, it's just all kind of jumbled.
This is sort of like a branch off and going into tinfoil hat theory, but do you think canonically when you use the skill, it makes your brain swell, and that's why why the fractured skull hurts whenever he uses skill?
Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. That could be true, though.
Listen, I'm just saying, why else would a fractured skull hurt whenever you use magic, unless it's physically doing something to your brain?
Could be true. Just broke it perfectly in the right spot for the right lobe to swell or something.
There's one of your lobes is the responsible for skill. And that's canon, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah,
as far as I could tell. It seems as though that would have to be the case.
Right. Thank you so much for tuning in to the rest of this chapter and this episode here. If you have thoughts on this episode or just theories that you want to discuss with us, please let us know at isfitzhappy@gmail.com. You can go to our website at isfitzhappy.com or isfitzhappy.podbean.com. Find other links there and all of our episodes. Or you can message us directly on our socials at Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube. We're at isfitzhappy at all of those. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope to see you next week.
All right. Now it's time for the podcast. It's our favorite part, and that is when you guys tell us what you think.
Yeah, and we're going to start it off with a couple comments on Spotify. So thank you very much. First off, K Salmon 66 for commenting and catching up with all of the episodes. Congratulations.
Yes.
Now you have to wait with everybody else. And then Tamara also has a comment on episode 266 talking about Dutiful's use of the wit. So we had a conversation about why, and you brought up, I believe, Emma, why isn't Dutiful feeling things around him when Fitz is in his head? Why can't he feel just the cat when it springs on him, that sort of thing? And we were talking about how maybe Fitz was raised differently or used the wit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And Tamara's thinking that I think it's just the strength of Fitz's wit versus Dutiful's. Tamara thinks that it's not the lack of training and that Fitz is just much stronger in the wit than Dutiful. So he feels all the living things around him rather than Dutiful having the same kind of connection with nature.
Right.
Which is definitely very possible. And thank you very much for chiming in, because we had an email as well that talked about this a little bit too from, I believe, Jason?
Yes. Jason wrote in to also talk about the exact same topic, saying, I thought your point about Fitz learning to notice the world around him from his early wit bond seemed like a good explanation. The cat/paladin would likely be uninterested in sharing this with Dutiful. I also noticed that in Fool's Fate, Fitz observes that Dutiful doesn't sense Icefire at the moment when both Webb and Fitz can, and he speculates that he might just be stronger in the wit than Dutiful. Perhaps that's relevant?
Which kind of, goes hand in hand with Tamara there.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, obviously, Fitz just thinks that he's stronger than Dutiful in the wit, which that's pretty good evidence. So that's probably true. However, I also think the explanation that the cat/paladin was kind of in control of that situation, wouldn't care to give those senses over to Dutiful.
Right.
But that's also kind of counter to Paladin's goal, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard.
I like the combination.
Yeah.
Personally, I like my explanation that I had in the episode that Fitz, that's his sense of everything, right? Dutiful was kind of raised socially and has a bunch of other things that he can rely on rather than the wit, was not introduced to it too young. But it also makes a ton of sense that Fitz is just stronger in the wit, because that can happen.
And also he uses it more, and it seems like magic in this world, yes, there's like a certain threshold that you will never be able to surpass, but the more you use something, the better you are at it.
Right.
And if this is the first that Dutiful has ever been able to be introduced to the wit sense, even, it makes more sense that he wouldn't be as good at expanding those boundaries to sense things.
Yeah.
Because we know Fitz can sense pretty far, right? He doesn't do it all the time, but there are a lot of times when he is hunting for something or someone and he expands his senses around him.
Yeah, he can go pretty far, for sure.
And it's not just a little tiny radius. So I don't know. See, maybe it is just, skill level versus.
But I mean, well, we don't have to get into that conversation. I was going to say, like, the expansion of his mind could also be using the skill to kind of touch on living things that he can find too.
That's true.
And then just the combo. But Dutiful has the same thing. So.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't know.
Definitely could be strength and a bit of practice. But thank you very much, Tamara and Jason, for that comment. Jason had a couple other things in his email too. Specifically, first off, was Lord Golden not wanting to leave immediately. So this conversation we've had a couple times, your initial thought was that it would be too awkward socially for Lord Golden, and Beloved was being a little bit selfish. He wanted to save up that social stature for Lord Golden, or just be in that role longer. And Jason says, I think one good reason for worrying about the excuse for leaving and for Lord Golden delaying is that they could be detained by force if the Brisingas suspect that they are looking for the prince. So this is something that last episode too, we had multiple people bring up. Bastion and Cookie Baker both agreed that if the Brisingas are involved, they have to be super circumspect about leaving the Brisingas area, because if they're not and the Brisingas suspect them, they could use any sort of people following, attackers, force, kidnapping, send messages ahead to stymie their search and prevent them from doing something much easier if they could do it by stealth.
Right. So even though that's not explicitly stated, that is maybe something that is just implied between the Fool and Fitz, that both of them would know is the consequence for not following the rules, which I think is fair. It's a fair assessment.
And Jason says, at the very least, if they were not circumspect, if they just kind of chased after the prince, it would alert the piebalds of who is following them, and by extension, that one of them is likely the wit companion of Nighteyes. This reason isn't directly invoked in Lord Golden's justification, but perhaps it's implicitly understood by him and Fitz as the consequence of failing the ruse. Which is true, because Fitz was also worrying in that chapter about, and Nighteyes pointed out, like, hey, they were trying to kill me.
Yeah.
They knew I was bonded to someone, and they were trying to kill me.
Yes.
So that is another point in the worry column. So let's do it secretly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's definitely reason to be as stealthy as possible.
The last thing that Jason has here is a comment, and the discussion we had about Lord Golden's interest in how Fitz was taking the gift of the horse. And Jason says that this one confused me as well, but one radical possibility is that he was thinking of the horse as a potential wit companion for Fitz in response to Nighteyes' declining health, and wanted to know if Fitz had formed any sort of wit connection with My Black, which is... So we had this conversation last episode as well.
Yes.
How Fool is very concerned about Fitz's ability to make connections, his isolation tendencies, and how he was healing after giving up some of his memories to Girl on a Dragon. And Jason, I think without giving the reasons for it, kind of nails that same vibe. And while I don't believe that Fool was looking for a replacement for Nighteyes because of his failing health, because Fool wouldn't have known about Nighteyes' health or how old he was. I mean, he could know how old he was getting, but he didn't know about his health or his aging or anything like that. Well, he was
there when Nighteyes had was choking on the fish bones.
That's true.
And saw that recovery.
Yeah, and maybe then he decided I need to get a horse for Fitz.
Maybe.
Yeah, true. But to see, like, if he had that connection with My Black, to see if he was making those connections and reaching out and sharing life.
Yeah, and I will say it's not really fair of Fool to later on be upset that Fitz couldn't even bond a horse because
he was in mourning.
Well, that, but also when Fitz first meets My Black is not interested.
Right.
Like, it's not a thing that you can just do. Just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean you can do that thing. Like, if I'm a good drawer, it doesn't mean that if you gave me oil paints, like, that I would be able to then paint a picture. I'd draw, you know? Like, I feel like something similar that, like, Beloved had good intentions, but doesn't quite understand the culture or how this thing works.
Right.
And so is disappointed when Fitz doesn't have the outcome that was intended, but doesn't realize that that wasn't a really realistic outcome anyway.
Yeah.
And that Fitz did kind of have connection with My Black in a way. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, for writing in. Really appreciate the thoughts there, and they kind of echo a lot of the other listeners. So,
yeah.
Appreciate that.
Keith wrote in as well. And this is on the topic of best fathers in the Realm of the Elderlings series. So Keith has a very hot take, and that is that King Shrewd is the best father.
Agrees with us on King Aod, would probably be a good father, but we don't see enough of him being a father, right? We see through other people's eyes, like, some policy things that maybe people don't agree with, but we just don't have enough to really say. But I mean, it's a good shout out, but not a solid candidate in Keith's eyes. So King Shrewd is his hot take coming through.
Yeah. And the reasoning being that King Shrewd raised 3 competent sons who were very good at their roles that were given to them.
Yes. Yeah. The issues resulting from the things that he could not control were the things that went wrong, basically. Queen Constance's death during childbirth, his early onset skill/illness, and the death of skill mistress Felicity, and his fractious courtship and marriage to Desire, chivalry's impolitic marriage to Patience, chivalry's uncharacteristic indiscretion that created Fitz, chivalry's abdication, Desire's poisoning of Regal, Verity's poor adjusting to his role as King Waiting, and obvious skill addiction, which Shrewd has to encourage because of the war. And all of this is happening, or has happened, when we meet Shrewd. But even through all of that turmoil, which as Keith points out, isn't directly Shrewd's fault, although you could argue it because he's the king. But through all of that, he still shows some great fathering and mentorship in the text when Fitz sees him. For example, the scene where he claims Fitz and gives him the ruby pin. He has Regal by his side explaining his role as king to him. Regal's reaction lets you know that this isn't a one-off thing, just Regal doesn't appreciate it. And it sticks. Regal misquotes the same axiom Father always says when he and Verity meet Fitz for the first time. I think we can extrapolate a lot and conclude that Shrewd was the best father, which I think will be a hot take, but he did raise 3 men who were capable of ruling.
Yeah. Regal was a horrible person, but is that Shrewd's fault as a father?
Or is that Desire being an awful person?
Yeah.
You know? Half and half, you know?
I would argue that Shrewd's lack of ability to stop Desire being a bad person directly is reflected in his son Regal, but
that's not really being a bad father.
That doesn't make him a bad dad. I feel like potentially you could argue he's a bad dad to his older sons by, remarrying right away to the person that he actually loved and then babying their baby brother Regal.
We don't know if it was right away.
We don't know if it was right away, but I mean, I guess that how big is the age gap?
It's quite a ways. I think
it's not like 10 years. It's only
I think
5
it's
or 6.
I think it's like 7 between Chivalry and Regal. We estimated, so it would be 5 or 6 between Verity and Regal. I think.
Okay, well, that's not like that much time. I don't know. Whatever. I don't love the favoritism he shows towards his son, but that doesn't make somebody a bad parent for having an obvious favorite. I mean, you could argue it does. But,
so obviously you are correct that this was a hot take because we were like, you're not wrong, but also you're wrong.
Yeah. I do like the take, though. I appreciate it.
Keith also wants to revisit his last email that he shared about hedge magic and the whites reacting to it. And Keith is revising his thoughts on this, saying, I rethought my theory after watching The Prestige again after a very long time. Beloved is affected by the hedge magic, but in a more subtle way. So Keith's first thing was whites are magical beings. They're not affected. They just want to know how it works. They can handle the magic things, I believe. That was kind of the summation of it. And now Keith is saying whites are affected, but more subtly, but kind of in the way that if you watch a magician or performer as a fellow magician or performer, you're like, wow, that trick was awesome. Let me know. Like, I want to know how it works. And you get to know the ins and outs of the magic, and you can still be wowed by it, but now you know how it works because like you kind of have that in to the knowledge that it requires to understand it.
And you want to see if you can take. Yeah, you want to see if you can do it better.
Right.
Being a colleague instead of just an audience member. So I like that analogy.
Yeah. So Keith thinks that's kind of how Beloved / the whites interact with the magics of the realm of the Elderlings. And then it finishes off, says, who knows, maybe I'll change my mind again.
You are allowed to do that, Keith. I do it probably every other episode. We also got a message from listener Melissa, and Melissa is talking about the Ida and Elle in a tangle.
Yes. So, okay. Melissa sent this email in, I think around when we had recorded the last chapter, like chapter 16 or 17, chapter 17, because this is parts 1 and 2, chapter 18. And I was like, Ida and Elle in a tangle, I don't get it. And then we read this chapter, I'm like, haha, here it is.
Yeah. So good catch. And this does, according to Melissa, also kind of lend credence to Ida and Elle maybe being a dragon.
Yeah.
So I'm glad.
I still like the dragon and elderling theory.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help the tangle thing. But Ida and Elle in a tangle is, a very evocative language of serpents.
It is.
It's a good catch there, Melissa.
Uh-huh. Yeah, good catch. And then Melissa also wanted to talk about when hunting with the cats, I believe them to be pursuing pheasants,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a wild chicken. I feel like pheasants aren't big. And maybe so they said in the book that they're hunting like a big bird.
Yeah.
But pheasant tail feathers are really colorful, which is what Melissa is saying, that the tail feathers are colorful and have really good plumage. And so that would be something that would make sense that they would be after for the collection of Lord Golden, and something that like nobility would hunt.
The males for pheasants can be 24 to 36 inches, so 2 to 3 feet, with the tail making up more than half of the length.
Okay.
36 inches is close to a meter for those not in
In the US.
in the US.
Yeah. So
they're like, they can get big, but like more than half of that is their tail feathers. And I thought, so pheasants make sense because that's a pretty typical, like, let's go bird hunting pheasants, you know, it's a game bird. However, the description was also they run before they fly.
Yeah, which is why I was thinking turkey.
And I thought pheasants just kind of flew, like startled and then flew up in the air. But I mean, I could be wrong about that because I'm not a
bird hunter. I should ask my cousin. He hunts pheasants.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But I do agree. Whenever I'm thinking of the feathers, I am thinking of pheasant feathers, to be fair. So like, because also I was thinking like turkey feathers don't.
No,
I mean,
fine.
I've seen many a turkey in the wild, but I've never been like, those are great tail feathers. And I know whenever you're a little kid in America during Thanksgiving time, you draw and color in colorful feathers for their little tails.
Like hand turkey.
Your hand turkey. But I don't think that's a real thing. I mean, if it is, I've never seen it, is all I'm saying.
But it very well could be, you know, some of the birds in there that Robin Hobb was thinking of. Definitely. I just don't know enough about.
Or maybe it's a magical secret third thing.
True.
That is neither of our guesses.
Yeah.
And it's just a mystical magical bird that only exists in this one paragraph in Hobb's works.
Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thanks, Melissa.
Our last email that we got was from Simon, and it's about the haircuts. And this is super interesting to read about. It's a lot about hair and their role in Britain, the history of Britain, and the UK in general. And that is very interesting. I don't know how much you want to read from this at all.
I also find it very interesting. I don't know. I guess we could give like a little. Simon is great. I love your email, Simon. They are so informative and so good. I don't want to do an injustice by like shortening it, but
also this is not a podcast where we're talking about the history of
hair,
UK. So I don't want to spend 50 minutes on it either. But it's really, really interesting. Basically saying that there are two different kind of. First off, Simon was focusing on monastic haircuts, which we kind of pointed out in that episode where we were talking about the importance of, you know, warrior's tail versus the scribe's cut versus whatever. And Simon's pointing out the monastic haircuts first off, and one is the Roman kind of way of doing it, mimicking Jesus's crown of thorns. It's just kind of that fringe around the outside of your
with the bald
spot, yeah. And then there's the old British way of doing things,
and Irish,
yes, which was closer to Hobb's scribe's hair, with the front of the head completely shaved away to maybe about halfway across the head, the line of the hair roughly level with the ears. And Simon goes on to say, I think both haircuts were meant to be a little humiliating, showing religious separation from non-religious worries. The British style might have been older and used by non-Christian priests, sort of like Druids, but that's not really clear in histories. And eventually there was kind of a whole meeting where they had to decide on which haircut to use, and they went with the Roman way. And a lot of these histories are told by people who were very much on the Roman side of this.
Yes, yeah.
And then there's more stuff in here about some Danish haircuts and things like
Yeah,
that.
how in around 790, that a learned monk called Alcuin wrote a letter to the king of Northumbria telling him off for imitating Danish haircuts. In that period, the Danish interactions with the English were often as pirates, whom we call Vikings, and the Danes were not Christians. So obviously their styles were great.
That is really funny. But ultimately, Simon kind of concludes this saying, haircuts seem to have been a strong identity marker in early medieval Britain. Some of that is about your occupation, warrior or monk, but maybe more strongly a cultural affiliation. And it all really mattered to at least some men. Because some of the things that Simon talks about is, these monastic traditions had different haircuts. The Danes had different styles than Britain and Ireland, but they were starting to catch on in the UK because they were just so vastly different and like more groomed. And a lot of people either denounced it or liked it, or they had meetings where they decided this haircut is in and this one is out for the monastic traditions. So super, super interesting that it would be more affiliated with culture.
Yeah.
And that kind of can relate to the Six Duchies a bit more because it's not necessarily culture that Robin Hobb is writing about. It seems like it's occupation based, but only for a couple things. Like servants, scribes, and warriors seem to have like their own kind of cuts.
Right.
And everyone else can kind of do what they want.
Yeah. Well, and we also know that there is a lot of importance in hair in Robin Hobb's writing because
in
we
Six
see,
Duchies specifically.
Yeah, where they cut their hair for mourning.
Yeah.
And at different lengths to denote how much mourning they're in. So I think that's also really important, that like it clearly is important in this world and potentially is due to some research that Hobb has done about medieval.
Yeah.
Earlier than medieval.
This is one of the things that really kind of elevates Robin Hobb's writing to me and her world building, because it is very subtle.
Yeah.
But you do pick up on these things of like, oh, you know what a warrior's tale is kind of now because Fitz has described it multiple times. Right. You can kind of picture all these things. But when you think about it isolated as a system that we're doing, like a historical or cultural signifier in the Six Duchies, does she have like a document describing all of these haircuts, what they mean, and the hair stuff for Six Duchies, like the mourning, and it's all connected? Or is this just kind of put together? Who knows? But it seems like she has a full-on document and understanding of what hair means in the Six Duchies.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to kind of get that feeling from just reading books.
Yeah. Like there is sort of some historical basis or something. It like relates to us as well.
Some sort of grounding to the world building is very, very nice.
Yeah. So Simon, hopefully we did that justice. But keep it up.
I was fascinated, and I would probably listen to a podcast about that.
Yes.
About medieval British hair.
Yes.
And the history of.
So interesting. So thank you. And then finally, we had a message on Instagram from Gil.
Yes, and Gil is writing in response to episode 266, which is chapter 17. We were talking about Paladin and the cat and Dutiful, and Gil thought that when the cat says, "She's always with me," to Dutiful when Fitz is in his mind, that the cat might be trying to hint to Dutiful that she's literally inside the cat and wants Dutiful to get away. Maybe that's the way that the cat could say it without Paladin catching on or trying to like control what the cat says. Maybe it was some kind of warning to Dutiful, like, "Hey, where's the woman?" And the cat's like, "She's always with me."
Yeah. I definitely think the cat was trying to tell Dutiful straight up where the woman was.
Yeah. But I don't even think like the cat is trying to lie or like was even, I don't know, just like answering a question, it felt like to me. Just like, yeah, she's with me. What do you mean?
Why are you looking? She's here.
Stupid human.
Yeah. But I don't know
Pet me. Give me fish.
Literally. I don't know if I read it as like a warning or anything at this point. I think it's more just annoyed that Dutiful's not paying attention to her.
Yeah, I feel that. So yeah, Gil, I do think that while the cat was saying that deliberately to Dutiful, I don't know if it was out of defiance or anything. It might have just been answering a question. It's really hard for me to gauge how much the cat is involved in all of this and how much the cat is aware, because it just seems so young.
Yeah.
And I know we get a little bit more in a few chapters, like closer to the end, but I just don't know how much of its psyche and like thought process we get.
Right. Yeah. And then Gil also went on to talk about how later Lodwin comes to Prince Dutiful's rescue.
We assume that it's Lodwin, yeah.
Yeah, we're assuming.
Because a man on a horse saved Dutiful from being treed.
Yes. So when that happens, Gil says that they thought that maybe Paladin contacted him somehow. Maybe they have familial wit connection that allows them to speak. Maybe that's something with the wit that is frowned upon, and therefore Rolf hasn't spoken to Fitz about it. We know Paladin doesn't have any scruples about riding with her cat when she dies, which is also extremely frowned upon.
Yeah. So how do you think that they communicated?
I don't even know if it had to be actual communication so much as Paladin using her cat body to go get her brother. Like the brother knows that his sister's in there, and if she like, I don't know, moves towards the saddle or like jumps on the saddle and looks at him, he'd maybe know that she wanted something. You know what I feel like there's ways that animals can communicate even when it's just an animal to humans that they need something. So if that animal is a human and the person knows that there's a human mind in there, you might be a little bit more able to just follow along.
Maybe. My thought kind of goes hand in hand with the discussion about Paladin being able to talk to Dutiful through the wit. If Paladin is in the cat's body and can talk with the wit, I don't see why not they can reach out to her brother directly, or if worse comes to worse, the horse. And the horse can pass it along.
I feel like the horse is more likely. I don't think she's going to be able to talk to other humans. I mean, maybe she can. I don't know. Cats seem to be a weird outlier.
Yeah.
But my thought on maybe not being able to talk to other humans would be because Dutiful is bonded to the same animal that she is, that they are able to talk through the bond.
Yeah.
And like that's more what it is rather than humans can talk through the bond,
right,
if they're sharing the animal's body.
Yeah. But the worst comes to worst, or like the most likely solution, I would say, is just talk to the horse, and the horse can talk to Lodwin. You know, it's easy kind of connection like that. And we know that people can talk over long distances.
Yeah.
Especially if they're familiar with one another. So I don't see why you can't call the brother along that way. So
that's true. And I don't know.
Yeah, thank you, Gil. But that it is an interesting question altogether with the communication between the wit and the scale, and why is Dutiful hearing the woman and the cat? They're separate though, but they're both through the wit, you know?
Yeah.
So it's fun to talk about all that stuff.
Yeah. So thank you, Gil, and thank you to everyone who wrote in. It's always fun to see what you guys have to say, and we look forward to seeing what you want to tell us next week.